My Karen's sister-in-law demanded I host her 3-day wedding for free at my farm. When I declined, she tried to sue me for family betrayal. I, 35M, own a small but thriving farm in rural Pennsylvania. It's my pride and joy, something I built from the ground up after inheriting the land from my grandfather. It's not just a business, it's a legacy. I'm a pretty laid-back guy, usually go with the flow, but I'm fiercely protective of what's mine. This is where the story of my entitled sister-in-law, whom I'll call, begins. My brother, B, has always been a bit of a pushover. He's a good guy at heart, but he's easily swayed, especially by Sael. She's always been high maintenance, demanding, and convinced the world owes her something. When they announced their engagement, I wasn't surprised, but I was definitely concerned. My gut feeling was right. The problem started almost immediately after the engagement. Elle began hinting, then outright demanding, that they have their wedding at my farm. It's so rustic and charming, she gushed, completely ignoring the fact that it's a working farm, not a wedding venue. I politely explained that hosting a wedding, especially a 3-day affair like she envisioned, would be incredibly disruptive to my business. I'd have to shut down operations, hire extra staff, and deal with a ton of logistics I wasn't equipped for. I suggested several beautiful local venues, even offering to help B and SIL with the costs. But Sael wasn't having it. It's family, she'd argue, as if that automatically entitled her to use my property for free. B, predictably, just mumbled something about keeping the peace. The tension escalated over the next few months. Elle started bringing up the farm at every family gathering, making not-so-subtle digs about how I was being selfish and not supporting my brother. My parents, bless their hearts, tried to mediate, but Elle was relentless. She even started contacting local wedding vendors, asking them to send quotes for services at my farm without my permission. I had to call each vendor and explain the situation, which was incredibly embarrassing and time-consuming. One evening, B called me, sounding distressed. He explained that Israel had found a wedding planner who was willing to work with the farm, but they needed a signed contract for me. I firmly told B that my answer was still no. That's when the threats started. Sael, apparently, had consulted a lawyer. She claimed that because my grandfather had mentioned family gatherings, in his will, a completely vague and non-legally binding statement, she had a right to use the farm for her wedding. I was stunned. This was beyond entitlement. It was blatant manipulation and an attempt to intimidate me. I immediately consulted my own lawyer, who assured me that SIL's claim was baseless. He advised me to send her a formal cease and desist letter, which I did. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I received a summons. AL was suing me for breach of family obligation and emotional distress. I couldn't believe it. This was a whole new level of crazy. My lawyer was confident we'd win, but the lawsuit was still incredibly stressful and expensive. I had to spend countless hours gathering documents, meeting with my lawyer, and preparing for court. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed by my brother, who had sided with CL, and I was constantly anxious about the outcome of the lawsuit. The local gossip mill was also churning. Small towns can be brutal, and the news of the lawsuit spread like wildfire. I became the subject of whispers and judgmental stares. Some people sided with me, but others seemed to think I was being unreasonable. This added another layer of stress to an already difficult situation. During this time, SL and B continued with their wedding plans, acting as if the lawsuit didn't exist. They even sent out save the dates, which, to my utter disbelief, listed my farm as the venue. I sent another cease and desist letter, this time directly to the printer they were using. It was a constant battle. The weeks leading up to the court date were a blur. I barely slept, and I was constantly on edge. I started having nightmares about my farm being overrun by wedding guests, my crops destroyed, and my business ruined. I was determined to fight this, not just for myself, but for the principle of the matter. Ayel's entitlement had gone too far, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. I sat in the courtroom, feeling a mix of anger, anxiety, and disbelief. Ayel and B were on the other side of the room, looking smug and confident. Their lawyer presented their case, which was based on the flimsy family gatherings, clause in my grandfather's will, and a lot of emotional rhetoric. My lawyer then presented our case, which was based on solid legal facts and property rights. He effectively dismantled Sael's arguments, pointing out the absurdity of her claims. The judge, clearly unimpressed with Sael's case, ruled in my favor. The lawsuit was dismissed, and I was ordered to pay my legal fees. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over, I thought. The aftermath of the lawsuit was messy. Bea and Sael were furious. They accused me of ruining their wedding and destroying our family. I tried to explain that I had simply been defending my rights, but they weren't interested in listening. They cut off all contact with me, and the rift within our family deepened. I didn't regret my decision, but I was saddened by the situation. I never wanted to be at odds with my brother, but Sael's actions had left me no choice. A few weeks after the court case concluded, I received a call from my lawyer. He informed me that Sael had filed an appeal. I was exasperated. It seemed like this nightmare would never end. The appeal process dragged on for several months, adding more stress and legal expenses. But finally, the appeals court upheld the original ruling. Sael's case was officially dead. During the appeal process, something unexpected happened. I received an anonymous tip that Sael had been spreading false and damaging rumors about my business, trying to sabotage my contracts with local restaurants and markets. Apparently, she had been telling people that my farm was unsanitary and unreliable, hoping to drive away my customers. I was furious. This was a direct attack on my livelihood, and I wasn't going to take it lightly. I hired a private investigator to gather evidence of Sael's smear campaign. The investigator was able to obtain emails, text messages, and even recorded conversations that proved Sael's involvement. With this evidence in hand, I consulted my lawyer again. He advised me to file a defamation lawsuit against Sael. This time, I wasn't just defending myself. I was going on the offensive. The defamation lawsuit was swift and decisive. With the solid evidence we had gathered, Sael's lawyer advised her to settle out of court. She was forced to issue a public apology retracting her false statements, and she had to pay me a significant sum in damages. This money not only covered my legal fees, but also compensated me for the losses my business had incurred due to her actions. It was a satisfying victory. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about holding Sael accountable for her actions and showing her that she couldn't get away with her entitled behavior. After the defamation lawsuit was settled, B finally reached out to me. He was apologetic and remorseful. He admitted that Sael had been completely out of line and that he should have stood up to her sooner. He explained that her behavior had put a strain on their relationship and that they were now in counseling. I listened to him, and I could tell he was genuinely sorry. I told him that I forgave him, but that it would take time to rebuild our relationship. As for Sael, she never apologized. She remained bitter and resentful, but she finally understood that she couldn't bully or manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. She had faced the consequences of her actions, and she had learned a hard lesson. It was a long and difficult ordeal, but I came out of it stronger and more determined than ever. I learned the importance of standing up for myself, even when it's difficult, and I learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right. My farm is still thriving. The rift in my family is slowly healing. And while the memory of Sael's entitlement still stings, I know that I did the right thing. I protected my legacy, my business, and myself. It was a costly lesson for everyone involved, but hopefully it taught Sael, and perhaps even B, that entitlement has its limits. Sometimes, the only way to deal with someone who believes they are above the rules is to show them, unequivocally, that they are not. And that's what I did. The whole ordeal was a stark reminder that family doesn't give anyone the right to take advantage of you. Sometimes, the strongest form of love is setting boundaries, even if it means facing conflict.